The phone rang, a cruel interruption, tearing through the quiet afternoon of Sarah's office. A voice, electronically warped, cut through her composure. "We have Wayne Miller, $250,000, 24 hours, no police, or he disappears." The line went dead, leaving Sarah suspended, the silence now a heavier weight than the threat, her hands trembling over the cold, still receiver. The sun beat down on Lake Erie, warming Wayne Miller's shoulders as he reeled in his line. The water was calm, a smooth sheet of blue stretching to the hazy horizon. Hank and Gus sat across from him in the old fishing boat, their faces content beneath their wide-brimmed hats. This was their annual ritual, a few days away from the auto parts warehouse, away from the hum of everyday life. Cell phones were off, tucked deep in waterproof bags, a silent agreement that the world could wait. "Another smallmouth, Wayne?" Hank asked, a grin on his face. He nudged Gus, who was already half asleep, his rod leaning precariously over the side. "Looks like it," Wayne replied, carefully unhooking the fish. He tossed it back into the clear water. "They're biting today, but nothing worth keeping. Yet." The quiet hum of the boat motor and the gentle lapping of waves against the hull had always been a kind of balm for Wayne. He cherished these moments of simple peace. Miles away, in her downtown office, Sarah Miller felt the weight of the world pressed down on her. Her hand was still clenched around the old Bakelite receiver. The voice, distorted and cold, echoed in her head. "We have kidnapped your husband." The demand for $250,000. The 24-hour deadline. The chilling instruction. No police. She felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin cold and clammy. Panic, sharp and metallic, tasted on her tongue. Her mind raced, searching for a path, an escape, but found only dead ends. The caller had threatened Wayne explicitly if she involved anyone. She sat there, a woman alone in a quiet office, the mundane suddenly ripped apart by terror. Back on the lake, the drone of a different motor grew louder, cutting through the serenity. Wayne looked up, squinting against the glare. A Coast Guard patrol boat, sleek and fast, was bearing down on them. It seemed an odd sight, not something you saw often in these parts, especially on a Tuesday afternoon. The boat pulled alongside, close enough for Wayne to see the serious faces of the men on board, their hands resting on holsters. "Is one of you Wayne Miller?" A man with a stern jawline called out, his voice carrying clearly over the water. His eyes scanned their small boat, lingering for a moment on each of them. Wayne felt a prickle of irritation. "That'd be me," he answered, lowering his fishing rod. "What's this all about?" Hank and Gus exchanged confused glances. "Mr. Miller?" the Coast Guard officer continued, his tone flat. "We've received a report that you've been kidnapped. We're here to confirm your well-being." Wayne blinked. "Kidnapped?" He looked at Hank, then Gus, a bewildered laugh catching in his throat. "Kidnapped? No, sir. I'm just out here fishing. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine." He gestured to the open lake, the rods, the tackle box. The officer remained impassive. "We'll need to do a quick search of your vessel, Mr. Miller, and confirm identities." The Coast Guard stepped onto Wayne's boat, their movements precise and efficient. They checked their IDs, looked through the small cabin, their eyes missing nothing. Wayne felt a growing sense of surrealism. This was like something out of a movie, not his annual fishing trip. After a few minutes, the officer nodded. "Everything appears to be in order, Mr. Miller. However, we've been instructed to bring you home. There's a situation." Wayne sighed, the irritation returning. All right." He turned to Hank and Gus. "You two finish up here. Dock the boat at the marina and secure the cabin for me. I'll call you later." Hank looked concerned. "Everything all right, Wayne?" "It'll be fine," Wayne said, though he didn't quite believe it. He stepped onto the Coast Guard vessel, feeling a sudden chill as the sun slipped behind a cloud. As the boat sped toward shore, the hum of the engine was the only sound. Wayne sat in the back, watching the receding figures of Hank and Gus, two steady anchors in his life. He thought back to how he'd met them, years ago, in a place far less serene than Lake Erie. State prison. Hank and Gus had been sent up for separate incidents, both for assaulting the men who'd been sleeping with their wives. Passion, as the judge called it, turned violent. Wayne had been there for receiving stolen property, a messy business involving his father's auto parts warehouse. His father, a man of surprising compassion, had pulled strings, paid for good lawyers. When Hank and Gus got out, Wayne's father had given them a chance, offering them jobs at the warehouse, a small apartment above the old office. They'd worked hard, rebuilt their lives, married new women, started families. Now they were loyal friends, more like family, the kind of men who never forgot a kindness. The Coast Guard docked at the small-town marina where a police cruiser was waiting. Wayne stepped out, feeling the solid ground beneath his feet, but the sense of unease was already a cold knot in his stomach. The officer opened the back door of the cruiser. "This way, Mr. Miller." The drive home was quiet, the world outside the window a blur of familiar streets and houses, but none of it felt real. The police cruiser pulled into his driveway, a jarring sight against the familiar brick of his home. Wayne stepped out, feeling a heavy sense of disorientation. The front door swung open and Sarah rushed onto the porch, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. She didn't wait for him to reach the steps, instead hurrying down, throwing her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. "Thank God you are safe, Wayne. I was so worried." Her voice was muffled, thick with emotion, and he felt the dampness of her tears through his shirt. Her grip was tight, almost painful. He patted her back, still feeling a knot of annoyance, not quite understanding the depth of her reaction. "Safe? Of course I'm safe, Sarah. What the hell is going on?" He pulled back slightly, looking at her tear-streaked face. A man stepped out from the doorway, a trim figure in a dark suit, his face unreadable. "Mr. Miller, Detective Olson, Toledo Police Department." He extended a hand. Wayne shook it, the man's grip firm and brief. "Your wife called us this morning, reported you had been kidnapped." Wayne's gaze snapped to Sarah. "Kidnapped? Sarah, what are you talking about?" He shook his head, looking back at Olson. "This has to be some kind of sick joke. Who in their right mind would kidnap me? I run an auto parts warehouse. I'm nobody important." He felt a flicker of embarrassment, then anger at the absurdity of it all. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The phone rang. Wayne was saying, a voice sounded like it was changed, disguised. "He said he had you, demanded $250,000. He said I had 24 hours, and if I called the police, you'd die." Her voice wavered on the last words. "He said no police, Wayne. He said you just disappear." She looked at him, her vulnerability plain. Wayne felt a cold rush of anger. "God, Sarah, if this was real, I could be dead. What were you thinking calling the police after a threat like that?" His voice was low, strained. The thought of it, the real danger she might have put him in, made his blood run cold. His irritation hardened into fury. Detective Olson stepped forward, his tone calm. "Mrs. Miller made the right call, Mr. Miller. No one should have to handle a situation like that on their own. We take every threat seriously." Wayne turned to Olson, his jaw tight. "No, she didn't make the right call. She risked my life. I'm fine, see? I'm right here. This whole thing is ridiculous. Can't you all just get out of my house?" He waved a hand dismissively, wanting them gone, wanting the normalcy of his quiet afternoon back. The smell of his own home, usually comforting, now felt alien, invaded. Olson didn't flinch. "We understand your frustration, Mr. Miller, but we can't just dismiss this. We'll need to secure the premises and wait for the time the caller mentioned." He checked his watch. "That's 3 o'clock this afternoon." Wayne threw his hands up in exasperation. "Wait for what? A prank call?" He knew it was useless to argue. He was tired, annoyed, and just wanted to go back to the lake. "Fine, whatever. I was out fishing with Hank and Gus. My phone was off. Has been since yesterday afternoon when we left for the cabin." He recited the details, feeling like he was explaining something obvious to a room full of children. The other officer, a younger man named Detective Hayes, nodded, jotting notes in a small pad. "Can you confirm the cabin address, Mr. Miller, and the marina where the boat is docked?" Wayne gave them the information, his voice clipped. The detectives moved into his kitchen, their movements professional and efficient. They pulled a small black device from a case, connecting it to the landline phone. It glowed faintly, a beacon ready for whatever might come. The kitchen, usually a space of quiet morning coffee and Sarah's baking, now felt like a command center. He walked into the living room, the space suddenly too small for him. He sat down heavily in his armchair, the one with the worn leather where he read the paper. The quiet hum of the phone beacon in the kitchen was a constant, irritating reminder of the absurdity of his situation. He should be out on the lake right now, the sun on his face, the quiet drone of the motor, the gentle tug of a fish on the line. Damn it, he muttered under his breath, leaning his head back and closing his eyes. I could be out fishing. The minutes crawled towards 3 o'clock, each tick of the kitchen clock amplifying the silence in the Miller home. Wayne sat in the living room listening to the muted sounds of the detectives preparing, feeling a strange mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. Sarah paced, her movements tight and controlled, her face pale. Detective Olson stood by the kitchen phone, giving Sarah a final rundown. When he calls, Mrs. Miller, tell him you've contacted a lawyer to help you get the money. Say you needed professional help to pull that kind of cash together quickly. His voice was low, reassuring, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. If he demands to speak to the lawyer, I'll take the phone. I'll be David Johnson. Sarah nodded, a faint tremor in her jaw. She clutched her hands together, her knuckles white. Wayne watched her from the doorway, a part of him still convinced this was all an elaborate, cruel hoax. Yet the palpable tension in the air was undeniable. The methodical professionalism of the police officers, setting up their equipment, their quiet discussions, slowly chipped away at his skepticism. Precisely at 3 o'clock, the phone rang. The sound was abrupt, shattering the quiet. Sarah flinched, then moved mechanically towards the kitchen table where the phone sat, its black box tracing device blinking softly. She picked up the receiver, her hand visibly trembling. Hello? Her voice was thin, barely a whisper. A distorted voice, metallic and devoid of warmth, came through the line. Mrs. Miller, it's nice to see you came home early to take my call. Do you have the money ready? The question was direct, an expectation. Sarah glanced at Olson, who gave a subtle nod. Not yet, she managed, her voice steadier now, though still fragile. I've contacted a lawyer to help me get the money. This is a lot of cash, and I needed some professional help. The voice on the other end hardened immediately. The distortion couldn't mask the shift in tone. What? I told you that if you contacted anyone, your husband would be dead. Did you contact the police too? The words were spat out, sharp and threatening. No, only with a lawyer, Sarah pleaded, her voice rising in panic. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to collect that much money so quickly. Please don't hurt my husband. Her eyes were fixed on Wayne, a silent apology, a desperate plea for understanding. Put that damn lawyer on, the caller barked, cutting her off. The command was absolute. Sarah handed the phone to Detective Olson, her hands shaking as she released the receiver. Olson took it, his demeanor shifting instantly. He became David Johnson, the professional, the negotiator. This is David Johnson, Olson said, his voice calm and measured. I'm assisting Mrs. Miller. We're working on getting the funds together. Can you tell me exactly what's needed? The details would be helpful for collection purposes. He spoke smoothly, trying to buy time to gather information. In the background, Wayne could hear the soft clicks and hums of the other detectives, their fingers flying over keyboards, attempting to trace the call. The caller, clearly annoyed by the interruption, disregarded Olson's request for details. $250,000. That's what's needed. Or Bell dies. Is that clear enough for you, Mr. Johnson? The name Bell hung in the air, a chilling substitution for Wayne, an attempt to dehumanize, to distance. If we find out you or Mrs. Miller called the authorities, he dies. This isn't some goddamn game, the voice continued, laced with menace. The line crackled faintly. Olson kept his tone level. I understand the gravity of the situation. We're doing everything we can to comply. But before we can hand over that kind of money, we need to know that you have Mr. Miller and that he's alive. We need proof of life. He paused, letting the demand hang in the air, waiting for the response. The silence on the line stretched, taut and heavy, while the detectives around him worked furiously, their faces grim. A sudden commotion erupted on the other end of the line. Muffled sounds, a scuffle, then a distinct groan. The air in the kitchen grew impossibly tight. Then, through the speakerphone, a familiar voice, strained and filled with panic, cut through the tension. Sarah, it's me, Dale. These masked men came and kidnapped me right after you left the hotel this morning. Please give them what they want, please." The words tumbled out, desperate and broken. A loud, sickening bang followed, like a fist connecting with flesh. Wayne sprang from his armchair, a roar tearing from his throat. "Damn it! That's my loser brother Dale! What the hell does he mean you were with him this morning?" His gaze, a storm of fury and betrayal, impaled Sarah. She stood frozen, her face drained of all color, her lips parted in a silent gasp. The detectives watched, their professional masks slipping slightly. The distorted voice of the caller returned, a chilling amusement in its tone. "As you can see, sweet Sarah, we know you lied to us." A pause, deliberate and cruel. "Was that your husband yelling in the background? Does he know you were having fun with his brother?" The words hung in the air, a poisonous fog. Wayne felt as if he'd been punched in the gut, the wind knocked out of him. Everything shifted, twisted into something ugly and unrecognizable. The caller continued, enjoying the unraveling. "We initially targeted Wayne, of course, checked the junkyard, found out he was on vacation. Then we saw you, Mrs. Miller, leave your house and head to a hotel. The room was registered under Mr. and Mrs. Miller. So naturally, when you left and the other Mr. Miller stayed behind, we assumed he was our target. We followed you from your house to that hotel. A nice place, by the way. Very discreet." Wayne felt a cold dread settling in, a terrible understanding blooming in the wreckage of his disbelief. The caller went on, explaining the mistake with a chilling nonchalance. "Turns out we kidnapped the wrong Mr. Miller. Your brother-in-law, Dale, eventually told us he had a twin brother. Quite the surprise." Detective Olson, recovering from the sudden shock, maintained his lawyer persona. "So," he said, his voice flat, "what do you want now that you don't have Wayne Miller?" The question was a tightrope walk, trying to keep the caller engaged while processing the bombshell they'd just dropped. The caller's tone shifted, a new resolve entering the distorted voice. "New demands, $300,000 by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, or Dale Miller dies." The price had gone up, the stakes raised. "The extra money is for the lies, Mrs. Miller, and what we went through. No more games, no more money. He dies." The threat was stark, unforgiving. And then, with an abrupt click, the line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum filled with Wayne's rage and Sarah's shattered guilt. The blinking lights of the police equipment seemed to mock them, useless in the face of this sudden, terrible truth. Wayne stared at Sarah, his chest heaving. The initial disbelief had solidified into a concrete block of fury and disgust. His own brother, his own wife. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Sarah's immediate tears, her panicked calls, her desperate pleas. It wasn't just fear for him. It was fear for them, for the secret. The reality of it, raw and brutal, was worse than any kidnapping. He had been so annoyed, so dismissive of the whole affair, thinking it was a simple prank. Now he understood. The shame of it washed over him, hot and bitter. The quiet, controlled anger of Midwestern men was simmering to a boil. The phone clicked dead, leaving a void that Wayne filled with his own sudden, violent fury. He lunged towards Sarah, his face a mask of primal rage. "You goddamn cheater! Now you're having fun with my brother?" The accusation was raw, guttural, a sound of profound betrayal. "I won't give a dime to save his ass," he roared, his hands clenching into fists. The words were not just anger, they were a death sentence for his brother, for his marriage. "The bastards who caught him will only save me from destroying him." Two officers, reacting swiftly, stepped between Wayne and Sarah, their movements practiced, professional. "Mr. Miller, please calm down," one of them urged, his voice firm but even. Wayne ignored them, his eyes still burning into Sarah. He turned abruptly, walked to the refrigerator, pulled out a beer, and twisted off the cap with a sharp crack. He took a long swallow, the cold liquid doing little to quench the fire inside him. "I will have nothing to do with my gigolo brother or my wife," he muttered, his voice low and dangerous, as much to himself as to the room. The beer bottle felt cold and heavy in his hand. Sarah collapsed onto a kitchen chair, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "Wayne, please! You don't understand." Her voice was muffled, desperate. "You have to help him. He's your brother." The words were a ragged plea, tearing through the tense silence. Detective Olson stepped forward, trying to regain some semblance of control. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, we need to focus. Dale is in immediate danger. The new ransom demands are serious. His voice was calm, a necessary anchor in the storm of emotion. Wayne scoffed, taking another gulp of beer. Let them keep him. Maybe they'll do us all a favor. He felt a perverse satisfaction at the thought, a dark, vengeful justice. Sarah lifted her head, her face blotchy with tears. When I thought it was you, Wayne, I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. She tried to explain, to justify, to find a sliver of understanding. I called the police because I was terrified for you because of the threats. Of the put. I didn't want to involve anyone, but I couldn't just let them hurt you. Wayne slammed his beer bottle onto the counter with a thud. Terrified for me? No, you were terrified your little secret would come out. This whole thing, your fear, it's just a cover for your affair. The betrayal was a festering wound, overshadowing any genuine fear she might have felt. The picture of her and Dale in a hotel room, under his name, burned in his mind. The detectives exchanged glances, a quiet, professional assessment of the marital wreckage unfolding before them. Detective Hayes spoke quietly to Olson, reviewing the new ransom, the tighter deadline. 300,000 by 9 a.m., sir, and a new target. Wayne stood, his eyes still fixed on Sarah. I am not paying for his freedom. And you, he pointed a finger at her, trembling slightly, you get out of my house. Now. Sarah looked at him, her face crumbling completely. The full weight of what had just happened, what she had done, settled over her. Not just the affair, but the exposure, the public humiliation, the utter destruction of her marriage and family. The life they had built, the one Wayne had worked so hard for, was splintering into a million pieces. Regardless of the family situation, Mr. Miller, Detective Olson interjected, his voice cutting through the emotional debris. We have a kidnapping and we have a ransom demand. We have to proceed as if this is real. Your brother's life is at stake. He looked at Wayne, then at Sarah, a silent urging to set aside their personal drama, at least for now. But Wayne barely heard him, lost in the echo of Dale's voice, Sarah's tears, and the cold, hard fact of what they had done. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The air in the Miller home remained thick with unspoken recriminations. Wayne, retreating to the living room, stared blankly at the television, the sound off, his thoughts a tangled mess of anger and disbelief. In the kitchen, the detectives began the methodical process of piecing together the timeline, their focus now firmly on Sarah's movements. Detective Olson sat opposite Sarah at the kitchen table, his pen poised over a notepad. Mrs. Miller, he began, his voice calm, even. We need you to be completely honest with us now. Tell us about your stay at the hotel, everything. Sarah, still raw from Wayne's outburst, struggled at first. Her voice was weak, her eyes downcast. She picked at a loose thread on her sweater. After a moment, a sigh escaped her, and the words, slow and painful, began to come out. It's been going on for a while with Dale. Her confession hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Wayne, from the living room, heard the words, each one a fresh stab. She described how it had started, innocently enough. Dale, Wayne's twin, always had a way of making her feel seen, appreciated. When Wayne was busy with the warehouse, absorbed in his work, Dale would stop by, offer a kind word, a sympathetic ear. It had been a comforting presence at first, a friend. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, it had escalated. Dinners, late-night talks, the casual touches that lingered a moment too long. She mumbled about her guilt, her confusion. I never meant to hurt Wayne, I truly didn't. But I felt neglected, like he didn't see me anymore. Wayne, listening from the next room, felt a fresh wave of rage wash over him. Neglected? After all he had done, all he had built for them? The betrayal dug deeper, twisting the knife. He thought of Dale, always the charming one, the one who never had to work as hard, who always seemed to get by on his looks and his quick wit. There had always been a rivalry, a subtle current of jealousy beneath their brotherly facade. Wayne had always been the steady one, the responsible one. Dale, the wild card. Detective Olson, sensing the shift in the narrative, pressed for details. The hotel, Mrs. Miller. What time did you leave this morning? What did Dale say? Was there anything unusual? Sarah described the morning. Leaving Dale in the hotel room, the lingering farewell, a moment of fleeting intimacy now tinged with bitter irony. She had left around 8 o'clock, she thought, heading straight to the office. Dale had been planning to sleep in, then maybe grab some breakfast before heading back to his own place. Meanwhile, Detective Hayes, who had been on his phone, stepped back into the kitchen. We've confirmed Dale Miller's identity through his records, sir. He's got a rap sheet, previous conviction for fraud, some smaller offenses too. The information settled into the room, adding another layer to the already complex situation. Wayne, hearing this, stood up abruptly. He walked into the kitchen, his eyes hard. I told you I won't cooperate on any plan involving his rescue. Let him rot. His voice was low, resolute, devoid of any brotherly affection. Olson looked at Wayne, then back at Sarah, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Mr. Miller, we have to treat this as a genuine kidnapping, regardless of personal complications. He turned to Sarah. Given Dale's background, Mrs. Miller, it's possible these kidnappers are connected to his past. We'll be looking into his known associates, his previous criminal connections. That might be our best lead. Sarah, seeing the path narrowing, the grim reality of Dale's situation, and the shattered pieces of her own life, felt a fresh surge of desperation. I can try to raise the money myself, she offered, her voice barely a whisper. I have some savings. Maybe I can get a loan too. Wayne's glare was like ice. Don't bother, he snarled. You'll only be saving your own sorry hide. The words were a bitter truth, cutting through any pretense of concern for Dale. His anger, once focused on her betrayal, now encompassed the entire messy, humiliating situation. The night passed in a blur of strained silence and hushed police discussions. Dawn brought no relief, only the grim reality of the impending 9 o'clock a.m. deadline. In the Miller kitchen, the officers finalized their plan for the ransom delivery, hoping to use it as a trap. Mrs. Miller, Detective Olson began, addressing Sarah. We'd like you to make the drop. You're the primary contact, and it might be safer for you. Wayne, who had been listening from the living room doorway, slammed his fist softly on the doorframe. No, she's not going anywhere near them. She's caused enough trouble already. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, yet carrying a cutting edge. Olson paused, considering. He looked at Wayne, then back at Sarah, who sat pale and distraught. All right, Mr. Miller. Then we have a different approach. We can outfit you. You act as if you're paying the ransom, but you'll be under full surveillance. It's risky, but it might be our best shot. Wayne considered it, a cold, hard glint in his eyes. Fury still simmered, but a different kind of resolve was forming. Fine, he said, his voice clipped. But let's be clear. I'm doing this to catch these bastards. Not for him. He can rot for all I care. The words were bitter, a reflection of the profound betrayal he felt. There was no love lost for Dale at this moment, only a fierce desire for justice, or perhaps revenge. Sarah, seeing a sliver of an opening, tried again to reach him. She stood, moving tentatively toward him. Wayne, please, let me explain. It wasn't what you think. Her voice was a fragile whisper, begging for understanding, for a chance to mend what was irrevocably broken. Wayne turned to her, his gaze like flint. I think I heard it clearly enough, Sarah. My brother, my wife, a hotel room. What's there to explain? His tone was cold, precise, a wall built of ice. While the emotional drama unfolded, the other detectives were hard at work, their focus on Dale's past. Detective Hayes returned from a quick round of calls. Sir, we've found a few things on Dale Miller. He's been in some financial trouble lately. Gambling debts, a few bad business deals. He owes money to some unsavory characters around town. Olson nodded slowly. This changes things. It might not be about Wayne Miller at all then. This could be a collection, disguised as a kidnapping. The new information painted a different, more chilling picture. The 9 o'clock a.m. deadline, now only a few hours away, pulsed with an even greater sense of urgency. The detectives moved quickly. Wayne was led to a back room where a technician, silent and efficient, fitted a small, discreet wire to his clothing. He felt the cold metal against his skin, the weight of the tiny microphone, a tangible connection to the dangerous path he was about to take. The instructions were clear. Follow the demands, do not engage unless absolutely necessary, and trust the surveillance team. Sarah remained in the house, a nervous wreck. She watched Wayne prepare, her face etched with a desperate mix of fear for Dale and profound sorrow for her shattered marriage. She made no more attempts to speak to Wayne. His resolve was clear. He was a man driven by something beyond her reach. Wayne stepped out of the house into the cool morning air, the rising sun casting long, pale shadows. He carried a duffel bag, ostensibly filled with the ransom money, though it contained only tracking devices and a fraction of the demanded sum. His jaw was set, his resentment a burning ember in his gut. He was walking into danger not for a brother he suddenly despised, but to bring down the men who had brought this ruin into his life. The drop-off location awaited, an unknown spot where his world would either crash and burn or find a violent, desperate resolution. The drive to the drop-off location was long and quiet, the early morning light struggling to pierce the industrial haze. Wayne followed the instructions precisely, turning off the main road onto a crumbling asphalt path that led to an abandoned industrial site. Broken windows stared out from derelict factories, and rusted machinery lay half buried in weeds. The place smelled of damp earth and decay. He pulled his truck into the designated clearing, the duffel bag, ostensibly full of money, visible on the passenger seat. He cut the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic. Wayne gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He scanned the area, his eyes narrowed, searching. From the deep shadows between two crumbling brick buildings, two masked figures emerged. They moved cautiously, their strides measured, approaching his truck. Wayne felt the tension coil in his stomach, a cold, hard knot. He knew the police surveillance team was hidden nearby, a network of eyes and ears ready to move in. Their presence was a thin comfort. One of the masked figures gestured towards the duffel bag. Wayne knew the drill: leave the money, walk away. But he had a different plan. "I'm not leaving without seeing my brother alive," he stated, his voice firm, holding his ground. He wasn't going to simply hand over the money. Not for Dale, not after everything. A tense standoff ensued. The masked figures paused, exchanging a look. The air grew thick with unspoken threat. Then the taller of the two pulled out a weapon, a glint of steel in the weak light. Wayne's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. Just then, a disheveled figure stumbled out from behind one of the dilapidated buildings. Dale. His clothes were rumpled, his hair messy, but he seemed otherwise unharmed. He blinked in the early light, looking genuinely terrified. "Wayne, help me!" Dale cried out, his voice hoarse with fear. He looked at the masked figures, then back at Wayne, his eyes wide. As the masked figure shifted, moving to grab the duffel bag, a sudden surge of activity erupted. Detective Olson's voice, clear through Wayne's earpiece, gave the signal. "Go! Go! Go!" Blue lights flashed, sirens wailed, and police cars swarmed the area. Officers, emerging from every conceivable hiding spot, converged on the two masked figures. A brief, violent struggle ensued. The masked figures were quickly subdued, forced to the ground. During the commotion, something shifted. As one of the kidnappers was disarmed, his mask slipped. Wayne recognized him instantly. Mikey, an old acquaintance of Dale's, a small-time crook with a reputation for bad decisions. Dale, seeing his meticulously crafted plan unravel before his eyes, bolted. He tried to flee, scrambling over a pile of rusted barrels, but he was quickly cornered by a team of officers, tackled to the ground. The pieces clicked into place, not with a gentle understanding, but with a sickening thud. This wasn't a kidnapping, it was an elaborate setup, orchestrated by Dale himself. His own brother had faked his abduction to extort money from him, using Sarah's affair as the ultimate leverage. The entire humiliating ordeal, the terror Sarah had felt, the profound betrayal Wayne had experienced, all a cynical ploy. Wayne looked at Dale, now struggling in police custody, and felt a cold, hard stone settle in his chest. His brother, his own flesh and blood, had used their shared history, their family, their secrets for a quick score. The depth of that treachery was almost incomprehensible. Wayne watched as Detective Olson moved towards Dale, who was now handcuffed and sitting on the damp ground. Dale initially mumbled denials, his eyes darting around, but under Olson's calm, insistent questioning, he finally broke. The confession spilled out, a pathetic stream of gambling debts, shady deals, and the desperate need for money. He admitted he'd heard Sarah's frightened call to the police, knew about her affair with him, and seized the chance to stage his own kidnapping, turning Wayne's marriage into a lever for cash. Wayne stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "You used your own wife to lie to me. You set this up? For money?" The disgust was palpable. Just then, Sarah arrived, escorted by another officer, her face a mask of shock and shame as she heard Dale's final admissions. The full weight of Dale's betrayal, his callous manipulation, settled over her. She looked used, foolish, and utterly heartbroken. Amidst the fading chaos, Wayne and Sarah stood apart, the truth of their broken marriage laid bare. "This changes everything, Sarah," Wayne stated, his voice flat, the finality clear. Dale and his accomplice, Mikey, were led away, facing charges. Wayne returned to an eerily quiet home, the weight of his unraveled life pressing down. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt cold, hollow. He thought of his business, the loyalty of Hank and Gus, the life he had built. All of it tainted. Divorce seemed inevitable. The Midwestern calm of his life was just a veneer over simmering secrets. He was at a crossroads, left to pick up the pieces, facing a new beginning, alone. The question of Sarah's fate, and what real payment for this betrayal would be, hung heavy in the silent air.